Hello everyone. In today's video, we're going to be starting a three-part series dedicated to the T-33 by iniBuilds. Very excited about this one. This is one of those airplanes that, you've seen those old 1940s and 50s movies, and you're like, that one. And I'm like, yeah, that one kind of a thing. It is interesting, and it's got a very unique fuel system, which is different. It requires a little more attention, especially for those VR flyers out there. But I like the way it works, and it's kind of fun. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're going to take a look at today is the fact that we're not in lovely Connecticut. We're very close to Los Angeles, California. Now, the reason I chose that, of course, is because the classic movie This Silent Earth featured this airplane at this airport with, of course, our hero Cal Meacham, who is one heck of a scientist, to say the least. Great movie if you haven't seen it. So, of course, we're going to climb on in, and remember, Lockheed Martin has loaned it to me, kind of like, you have to see the scene to get it. But the cool thing with this aircraft is it's relatively simple. This is designed to be a trainer. Other than the goofiness with the fuel system, it's just a snap to get going. And that's one of the things I really respect about it. And I think is actually pretty cool. One thing I will say, though, is the good folks at INI didn't simulate everything. We got this lovely switch. And I've tried it 100 times to try to get that switch to behave. I really, really want to click the JATO switch, but no jet assisted takeoff for me. And also, this thing for the nav switch is going to make you insane. Trust me on that one. You'll know what I mean when you give it a try yourself. But everything else is actually pretty straightforward. So we're going to start over here on the right. So I've got everything closed up. If for some reason you did have the canopy open, maybe you did something like this, where you ran down here and bopped that button and the thing started like that, you can undo all that relatively quickly. One thing I do want to point out, though, let me go ahead and shut this off, is they do give us an EFB in this aircraft, and they actually give us an alternate cockpit as well. If I were to run down here and you see this little tiny bolt, if I click on that, you'll actually see it pops up a bunch of extra options for us, ranging from I want acrobatic strings, I want to get rid of the ladder. You can pop the ladder on real quickly if you wanted to, kind of a thing. You can even put rockets and bombs on the side of that, and you can see they're just sort of hanging out there. Not needed. And if you're wondering how we got these, of course, we bought this off the INI website versus the Flight Sim website, or the Flight Sim marketplace, I should say. So that's why that's going to be a little bit different when you look at it. So what we're going to take a look at now is, like I said, I sort of leave all this alone. There's not really anything in here. For those of you who are VR people, this is wonderful that you can just flip that on like that. Of course, you can set the rear pilot. I'm going to get rid of that. There's one other button I want to mention too, and that's this guy right here. If you click it, it gives us a modern cockpit. Look at that. It's pretty darn cool, and it simplifies a lot of sort of the frustration you might experience in this aircraft. But to be honest, give me the real thing. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to float down here, and we're going to take a look at this little guy right here. Let me go float towards it real quickly here. So this is the fuel remaining. And now you're probably sitting here going, no, you've already got a switch for that. You do. Your switch for this, or your gauge for this, I should say, is only the fuselage tank. This is the total fuel carried on board. Now, ready to confuse everybody? Watch this. So when you come over here, you'll notice we have a bunch of different switches for our fuel tank. And we have a water injection switch, which as far as I can tell, it's just a stress switch. The important thing to note here is our engine sucks fuel out of the fuselage tank only. So that means if we were to turn on the tip tank, which is a huge tank, by the way, that's if you want to look out the window real quick, that guy. If you want to flip this one on, for example, and shut the fuselage tank off, bad things happen. If you want to leave the fuel tank on in the middle of the fuselage and the tip tank, you're actually going to be taking tons of fuel, jamming into the fuselage, and then blowing most of it out the back. And I'm not talking in the form of thrust, just in terms of just literally leaking on account of the fact that we can't burn it. You basically overflood the fuselage tank. I did say that's a pain in the butt, didn't I? Don't worry, there are ways to kind of deal with some of these things, and I'll get to that once we get flying. So that's all set. I like that the way that is, and we're going to kind of do that from here. Another little weird quirk with this aircraft comes with the radios. If you notice here, I'm on 139. That's actually 114.0 is the current frequency that I'm on, and you're sitting here going, why is that? Well, let me show you something. If I were to grab this little decimal up top, I'll move my mouse, try to come over here so you can see what's going on here. What you're going to observe is if I go all the way to 9 and go one click past, it doesn't let me go anymore. So it's like, oh, okay, so 113.99, so basically 1.4. Well, watch what happens if I try to go down to 4. You can see that it's going to kind of sit there like that. Now, when we open up our lovely little EFB here for a second here, you'll notice you've got a lot of frequencies that have these strange 0.99s in them. So, for example, if I open this one up, let's say I'm going to do lax, which is where I want to go. If I were to click this, it will auto set that frequency. But if you come down here, you'll see this 1359. It's basically 113.6 is what this actually means. And no matter how hard you sit here and crank on this thing to 0, you're not going to get it. So just kind of be mindful of kind of that weirdness with this aircraft. Something they'll probably change. For those of you who are more TACAN fans, you'll probably notice here we're on 43 X-ray. You just have to remember that you have to set it to X-ray, and you have to make sure you set it to TACAN if you actually want to utilize it. But this is, X-rays are only up here. Our channel's down here, which makes it a little bit easier. But again, we'll get to that in a minute. So let's go ahead and get this thing started. Before I start it, of course, I want to go ahead and set my totalizer. Now, the nice thing is if I go up to weight and balance, I can see that I'm carrying quite a few gallons of fuel on board. Now, many people will panic and say, do I have to add all those up? Like, this is going to take me a minute. The answer is you're stressing out if you have to add this up. And let me show you why. Let me go grab myself a calculator. I have a button on my keyboard for the calculator. It's like as worn out as my W, A, S, and D keys are. But the cool thing here is we know how much gallons we have by just doing the math real fast. We have 5407 pounds divided by 96, divided by 6, gets us 901 gallons. So all we have to do is come over here and set this to 901 gallons. Now, as you can observe, this is going to take a minute, but don't worry, we can help you with that. 5 days later. There we go, 901 gallons. Now, why I did not decide to make it where you can just push this button to instantly set it to your current fuel is beyond me. But again, I didn't design this airplane. I just think it's neat that it has a totalizer, as well as a fuselage tank gauge, something that'll irritate us later. You'll see. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get this thing started. So I'm going to go ahead and pop on the battery. I'm going to lean down here. We're going to go ahead and close this and snap it to the full close position. And that thing's going to come down like a giant clamp as soon as we're ready to go ahead and do that. Come on. Come on down. Come on down. Ugh. Now, normally you press and hold that. Hang on a second. No, I was right. I was just being impatient. Hold down full close until it closes. I'm going to go ahead and lock that sucker like that. We're now going to go ahead and pop on the generator switch. So now everything's ready to go as far as starting goes. You're going to get a bunch of angry warning lights and stuff. One thing we do need to do, though, is we need to migrate to this side and pop on the fuselage tank. And now we're just going to slip that right to the on position just to confirm that that is ready to be used. And you can see it's ready. We're not going to bypass it. That's getting a little crazy. Oh, like I said, we'll get to that a little later. So now we're ready to start. We're just going to confirm our throttle is in the idle position, which it is. We'll confirm we have fuel, which we do. Not for long, as you'll see. Trust me on that one. And now we're ready to start. Starting is really, really, really easy. What we're going to do is we're going to press and hold the switch. I have a button on my joystick for this, by the way. And once we get up to 9% of our RPM, which is right over yonder, we're going to go ahead and engage the ignition switch here. It's about as complicated as that goes. So let's go ahead and pop that switch. I'm holding my starter right now. It's being held. And you can see here that my RPM is slowly starting to hike its way upwards here. And again, this is just a standard startup. We're not doing anything fancy. We're not going to have to play with the throttle or anything like we do on a lot of other aircraft. There's 9% right there. So we're just going to go ahead and tap the ignition switch. And next what we're going to do is we're going to wait until we get to about 18% of N1, which is right about where my mouse is right now, like that. We're going to release the starter. As soon as you do that, you'll hear it spinning up on its own. I wouldn't be standing there, buddy. Anybody got hot dogs? And that's all there is to it. So as soon as we've done that, of course, if we keep an eye on our exhaust gas temp, if something goes wrong, we can always shut off the fuel in a hurry. We can also see here very, very clearly the way everything is all set. We're pretty much ready to rock. I'm going to go ahead and close that cover. Engine's running smoothly. Probably would have been a good idea to go ahead and turn on our lights there. But again, that wasn't one of the standard checklist items, which I find kind of interesting. So making our way down here, it's just a matter of kind of cleaning things up. So all that's been gone, and we're going to check to make sure our hydraulic pressures come up, which it has. We could do anti-ice. We can also do a quick little throttle. Just make sure it works. Yep, everything seems to be working pretty smoothly here. Go ahead and pop on the inverter here. Without that, we don't have a precious gyro. Here's a cool trick, though. I'm just going to cage that gyro. In the real world, most likely what you would do is cage this gyro until you're ready for takeoff. Then you'd uncage it. But for now, we're just going to go ahead and I'll leave it kind of the way it is. Also like how the ball is not perfectly centered. It's actually surprisingly authentic. Now, another thing I want to show to you real quick is if you look over here on the right, remember how we started with 900 gallons? We're at 895 already. Just to give you an idea of how not good this thing is on the gas, which, I don't know, I find that kind of fun. Okay, everything's good to go. Our tank's good. Everything's all set with that. We have everything we need. We've closed up the hatches. If we needed any anti-ice or anything like that, that's actually located down here. We can also shut off the cabin pressure. You also have your landing light. I don't know why you put the landing light so close to something important, but it's kind of one of those things. So let's go ahead and get ourselves ready for taxi here. Everything's pretty much ready to go as far as startup and things like that. Keep in mind, you can do a lot of this in the back seat as well. But one of the things we'll go ahead and do is set our flaps. So the way this one works is a little funky. Basically, we're going to be using 60% of flaps. So you do 1, 2, 3 clicks. So you go 1, 2, 3, just like that. And give it a few moments, and you can see the flaps start sort of making their way down. And this is percentage out, which is a little different. Now, when you come here, you can see those flaps are nice and kind of bent down like that. I also appreciate the fact that they give you the ability to run through and test all the different lights. So if you wanted to make sure everything was working okay, like for example, I can't click this one for some reason, but you can see all my different lights are working. We can also do a fire test if we needed, just to make sure it's working. Seems like it's working okay. We have the unlatch switch, and of course we come over here, boop, 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 just like that, make sure everything's working. Uh-oh. Cool. We can also come here, of course, and synchronize our heading to our current heading. The key thing here is it's already been set, so we don't have to stress about that too much. We can go ahead and do all those things. Now, our course today is going to be a 170, so I'm going to go ahead and dial that in real fast here. Takes a half a moment here. I love these old school CDIs. I mean, this is like the OG CDI. I've actually seen these in civilian planes too, which always blew my mind just a little bit, but that's okay. That's good to go. Now, if you remember, we already preset our frequency earlier. It's a 113.59, which is really 113.6. Again, have fun playing with this thing. It'll make you absolutely insane. Let's go ahead and put that stick back between our laps. Okay, this looks pretty good to me. Give everybody a quick little wiggle. The hydraulic pressure in the real world would be coming up and down, which would be kind of interesting as you wiggle the stick around, but that would actually be pretty authentic. And one of the things you'll notice already is we've already got a fuel low warning. And you're probably sitting here going, what on earth? What's the deal with that? Well, if you take a look here, we've already burnt almost 20 gallons of gas just chilling here. Just to give you an idea of just how not good this airplane is. But that's okay, because I love stuff like this. So let's go ahead and get taxiing now. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel out the parking brake. You're going to want to go at full rudder. And if you have differential braking, this is the best thing in the world for you. Because the turning radius on this thing is like a bus. It's just garbage. Come swing over this way and kind of enjoy a nice broad turn. And we're just going to make our way to the runway. Like I said, this is very much 50s technology. So don't be surprised if you have a couple little kind of jumps and stuff like that as you're kind of getting used to it. It's not bad. I'd say for those of you familiar with the F-86, we really are about the same performance profile until you really get going. And then the F-86's swing wing will really, really make a difference. Swept wing, rather. It is not a swing wing. I guess you could make a swing wing version of the F-86. Kind of interesting. Go ahead and give it a couple little taps there. Again, you can always just hit the brake a few times if you need to. And we're just going to enjoy the nice little California western coast here. It feels very weird being on the West Coast. I know that like a lot of people imagine the United States, they think of California because that's where so many of the movies get made. But the reality is it's that if you look at the actual concentration of population in the United States, it's actually closer to like a couple miles west of Washington, D.C. It's all on the East Coast. But that's okay. I'll accept it because you folks get better weather than we do. So you get to make all the movies. Just kind of one of those things. When you're taxiing, of course, a couple little things that I find interesting. If you're an F-86 familiar with, one of the things you'd know, of course, is if you're at low taxi RPM, you have a really bad tendency for all your generator warning lights to pop on. You're not going to have that problem in this aircraft. Again, this thing is designed to be a trainer, so it's slightly more user-friendly compared to some of the alternatives as well. So we're going to enjoy a nice little kind of bounce as we make our way down here. Everything's looking pretty darn good. Just love how incredibly simple this is. I'm going to hold that brake a little bit. One thing you got to watch out for in this plane the first time you get into the air with it is just how incredibly sensitive it is going to be in pitch. It is very much more so than a lot of the things you've probably seen before. Let's see here. Just want to confirm that all my numbers are correct. Yep, that looks good to me. Let's go ahead and start sneaking. We're going to go ahead and hit the landing lights, which is down here. Click. Got to click up, and that'll get our little landing light. I love landing light on this thing. It's just sort of right there, which is fine. Give it a couple more taps. I don't know where we're getting the glitches today. I think it's something to do with hitting the ground just right. Nice little left turn. Remember, we have a very wide turning radius on this thing. It's just kind of the nature of this beast. Now, what I try to do is a lot of people want to like square it and take the left. You can't do that. You got to basically keep your turn in. Otherwise, you're going to take up the entire runway trying to get this thing turned around. And that's just, I don't know. I've flown DC-6s that I swear have tighter turning radiuses than this, but we'll deal with it. Yeah, man. It would also have a press to steer the nose button, most likely in the real world. There we go. Let's go ahead and kick it the other way. And I actually think the front wheel is a little too, it's too polite. There we go. Nice and lined up. You can see a nice little downhill here. Let's go ahead and get ready for takeoff here. So we're going to be using 100% RPM. We do not jam on the throttle. That's how you get a tailpipe fire. We just kind of feed it in, and it does pick up speed a lot faster than you expect. But one problem we have to deal with here is we're already at 70% of our fuel capacity, and we have 3 tanks to pick from. Now, if you take a look at the arrangement of the tanks here, you have your left wing, which is in the wing. That's this one. You have a inside, this is kind of your wingtip tank. This is a little tiny one. And of course, you have your big tanks over here on the edge. Ideally, when you're going to be burning this, remember, if we burn all this fuel first, you're going to create an interesting situation where all the fuel is stored here, which is fine, but now you've got this really lightweight thing basically bobbing up and down. Now, in the real world, it would completely depend on what you're trying to do. If we're doing aerobatics, we would have a different arrangement of fuel burn. The other thing you got to watch out for is our leading edge tanks don't hold that much gas. Either do the wing tanks. It's really these guys are the ones doing all the heavy lifting here. So let me show you how fast you pull fuel out of these systems here. Let's say, for example, we wanted to take my leading edge tank. Now, if I hit that, do you see how quick that is sucking the fuel out of that? Now, if I let this go, which I will, I'll show you what happens here. Let me go ahead and do one of these so you can kind of see it side by side. So you can see my fuselage tank is going right through the roof here. About 90% fuel. Again, we use 4% of our total fuel, and we haven't even gone full engine. Now, if I go to 100% here, you'll notice I'm now sucking fuel out of the leading edge ones, but I have no warning other than this little handy-dandy red light on the side that's going to tell me that I've sucked all the fuel out of them. Now, if I were to go back to normal mode, go click to this, you can see we're now just pulling fuel out of the fuselage itself. Kind of cool. Let's go ahead and give it a little bit of power now. We're just going to smoothly bring the throttle in. Do not hit it too hard or it'll run away on you. There we go. So we're looking for about 110 knots, which is a little weird because I think this thing's supposed to be miles an hour, but maybe that's just my own silliness. There's 100. We're going to just pull back about 1/4 of an inch. There's 110. Nose is going to come up, and we just do a power wheelie. Airborne, gear up. We're going to leave the flaps down. Check the hydraulic pressure when you do that. It's going to, in the real world, it would fluctuate, go, do one of those on you. And yes, that is a technical term. I'm going to go ahead and bring up some flaps. And we are delightful. Just like that. So that's about as complicated as that one needs to be as far as getting up in the air. Which again, makes our life a little bit simpler. We're going to take a nice gentle left turn, and we're going to start swinging around to our course here. Now that we're in the air, we can go ahead and take a look at some of the other systems on board this pretty cool thing. I'll go zoom my head in here. First of all, you'll notice that my magnetic compass there, as confusing as that is basically showing what direction we're facing. So for example, if I were to go ahead and straighten out like this, and pull my nose up about, you're looking for about 170 to 220, by the way, for your climb speed. Give myself a couple taps of trim. It looks pretty good to me. What you'll observe here is this is the actual heading that we're traveling on right now. We're doing about 145 degrees. And I notice that my destination here is a little over here on my right. So that's what that particular instrument is doing. So now if I come over to the right, just a little bit. There we go, right there. A couple taps of up trim. You will see that we're slowly going to center this needle, which is going to take us right to Los Angeles, kind of a thing. Haha, you got to see that movie. Now, if I were to come over here to the TACAN switch and go ahead and hit that, that's going to give us basically the exact same indicator because conveniently they're in about the same spot. And you also have your distance measuring equipment over here on the left that makes your life a little bit simpler. For now, though, I'm just going to leave it on VOR-ILS. Fabulous. Let's go ahead and level ourselves off here. And we are right on course. I know I'm on course because I can see that needle is nice and centered. And of course, if we wanted to be a little more precise, we could come to our left a little bit and actually center up that needle as well. Now, during climb, of course, we got a lot of things to be thinking about. One thing, of course, is just how incredibly fast you're going to be powering through those fuel tanks there. And one of the things we can do, of course, is we can go snap that onto that other mode and sort of enjoy it. The other thing, of course, we can do is just kind of keep an eye on our fuselage tanks. You can already see just how much fuel that we have on board. There we go. It's about 10,000 feet. I'm going to go ahead and let us dive down onto it. Going to get a little old-fashioned with this maneuver. And we're going to go pull the power back here just a little bit. Don't need to do too much. Between 85 90 is plenty. There we go. And just like that, we are on our course. Delightful. Just like that. A couple taps of trim. And we're looking good. So that will go ahead and conclude it for today's video. In the next video, we'll go ahead and show you how to fly an ILS approach with this, as well as all the different fun stuff that you're going to be dealing with for landing. Enjoy.